Street epistemology is a way of taking this study of knowledge out and applying it in the real world, in the street, not literally, but just out of academia. It's a way of having conversations with people to help them critically reflect on the quality of their reasoning through civil conversation. We have very much, as you said, based on the Socratic Method, and we're trying to introduce a lot of the latest techniques from psychology and epistemology that we know about today, that Socrates didn't know about, to give us the best chance of helping people reflect on the quality of their reasoning and their arguments and their beliefs in a civil, respectful way, collaboratively, not a debate, not something we're trying to fight. It's a way to be curious together about some idea, and through question and answering, as Socrates did, reflect on it.
Welcome to the New Flesh Podcast, the podcast you deserve. My name is Ricky Olpike, and joining me once again is Jonathan Astro. John, what's on the menu today?
Well, a very exciting episode today. Something a little different. We've got a very interesting guest, Reid Nicewonder, who is a street epistemologist, Ricky. Epistemologist. What do you think of that?
Sounds like a wacky board game. Epistemology, the board game.
That would be. Well, not to give it away, people, but I think we played that board game today.
I think we did.
So we actually, everyone's got to listen to this episode, because let's get serious. There's a culture war going on out there, and it's total bullshit. All right, and there's tribal factions, and everyone's picked up their scripts, and they're saying all this stuff. Forget all of that, and let's talk about how we know what we know, why we believe what we believe, and see if we can develop some tools to actually, cut through some of this, because it's getting real old. Don't you think?
Yes, for sure, and to have just a proper conversation. That's not heated, you're not worried about, you're not looking over your shoulder thinking, what if I say the wrong thing,
I was throughout the entire time we did it.
Yes.
I was thinking about, I even name check some of you people listening, all right? Just keep listening to hear that. Anyway, on with the show.
Well, we always tell you the truth here at the New Flesh Podcast, and the truth is that we need your help. We need you to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to the show. We're also on YouTube, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a comment about a show you liked, or perhaps one that you didn't. Word of mouth is also a very powerful tool, so please tell all of your friends. And finally, to our Uber fans, if you love what we do, you can send us a little cash via the Buy Me a Coffee platform. Any donation here is very much appreciated. Now, on with the show.
Reid Nicewonder is the creator and host of Cordial Curiosity, a YouTube channel that posts conversations about a variety of polarized topics. Reid follows a variation of the Socratic Method to expose and understand the ways in which everyday people come to have their strongly held beliefs. A graduate from UCF Film School, Reid is also a cinephile, which that excites us greatly, and an avid science and tech enthusiast. Reid, welcome to the New Flesh.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
So, Reid, are you coming to us live from Hollywood right now?
I am, I guess. Yeah, technically. Yeah.
Well, I know you're not on SNL, but this is interesting because what's it like living in? I just would not have, after looking at your content, I would not have picked Hollywood for you to live in. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I do go to some parks here nearby Hollywood, Runyon Canyon or Echo Park, but I also do a lot of stuff at UCLA as well.
Now, you're a fairly nuanced guy, and this will be an unnuanced question, but we have to ask, is Hollywood as woke as it seems from the outside? What's it like on the ground?
It is a woke cesspool, and with all the consequences of that, very manifest anywhere you walk around. Yes.
Wow. Do you have any examples of how that manifests, like just day to day walking around? I'm fascinated.
Yeah, just walk outside. You see the consequences of the defund the police movement, where it's just like a kind of a zombie land. Who knows where you're going to run into in terms of homeless people or mentally unwell people, and it's just trash everywhere, graffiti, and it's, I think, a consequence of, especially here in Hollywood, the defunding of the police. They have now like little Hollywood safety officers that go around on bicycles, but I don't think this is helping at all. This is just a Band-Aid on a huge problem that's not getting any better, so I'm out.
Well, you mentioned before the recording that you're moving. You don't have to tell us where you're moving necessarily if you don't want to, but are you Are you getting out for the reasons everyone else seems to be getting out?
I'd probably say so, yeah. The crime and just the general quality of life. So many stores are closed around Hollywood, where I live. I used to go to the ArcLight Hollywood all the time, where the Cinerama Dome is. Incredible place.
That's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, isn't it? Or is that different?
That I think it was in one of the trailers, one of the shots of that. Yeah, yeah. I was there when they shot all the Hollywood scenes. I was just out walking around, and I saw, oh, it kind of looks like the 1970s right now. I wonder what is happening. And then later that night, Quentin Tarantino and Brad Pitt are out there on the street driving around in this really cool car. It was great. Yeah, all these businesses are closed that I loved around this area, and especially the movie theater. So it's not worth staying for me.
Fair enough.
That is unfortunate.
So moving a little closer to your the reason we've gotten you onto this show. Now you seem like a guy who takes his mind and what goes into it quite seriously. How do you deal with this? I saw this on another podcast you did. I thought it was a fascinating topic. How do you personally deal with social media, YouTube, all of this online stuff when it comes to, grappling with deep thinking and deep work and trying to think deeply about things? How do you interface with all of those distractions? Do you struggle?
I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean like the struggle of worrying about what you're going to say, like being canceled, or just worrying about not saying wrong things or embarrassing things?
No, actually, those are definitely concerns. I'm just interested more in mental clutter. Like, I personally, grapple with YouTube and Twitter. We have to be on Twitter for the pod. I hate social media. I even hate saying I hate social media because it's a pathetic cliche. But honestly, I find, because you're trying to get to truth. You're trying to get to, as you just did with my question, you're trying to get to what I'm actually saying. And if you're engaged in all of these online media platforms, social media and whatever, does that interfere with that process?
Yeah, I guess I don't really engage in the traditional way with social media. I go out in the real world and meet space and talk to real people face to face, and then post that to YouTube and market the YouTube videos on traditional social media sites. And I never reply to anybody on Twitter. I never post a comment on public Facebook newsfeed. I just read my YouTube comments, which are pretty much universally positive. And I just have my own niche audience, and we have a great time.
You're such a strong man. I tell you what, don't you feel this pressure, this downward pressure from I'm talking about everyone I'm talking about your friends, I'm talking about your family, and these people do have influence over you. You don't tell me you go to these things and just go, I don't care what you think, like for extended family member or loved one. Like they're all saying, why aren't you on the thing? Wouldn't it be good if we could just share some pictures? Or that's how they find the in.
Or have you seen this viral video? Did you see this fight that happened in, the New York subway or whatever?
I do see that how social media usually plays out with these viral moments and videos, and I try not to contribute to that in any way and model a way of having conversations with people in the real world. I don't see much value in engaging much, especially on text, with text-based stuff. Clubhouse was an interesting app. Twitter Spaces, or now X Spaces, are interesting. Voice communication in real time or on video is nice to see. But regular social media is, probably cancer.
I think we should get off, John.
Well, I should get off. I know what you're saying, Reid. I certainly don't engage. I don't believe that engaging in argument online is at all fruitful, really, in terms of this sort of text flame war. Because if you think about to follow it to a logical conclusion, it just won't work. However, but does that mean even your input, like that means you don't watch YouTube videos, you never watch Car Cash videos, you don't watch Fight Haven like Peter Boghossian watches Fight Haven, like you don't do any of that? Or
Oh yeah, I consume a ton from social media. I'm addicted like everybody else. If I showed you my whatever whatever it's called, like the phone usage percentages. YouTube would probably be 90%. There's podcast apps, and I scroll through Twitter whenever have a free moment, so I'm addicted. It's bad.
Do you think that life was better? This is a pathetic question because it's obvious, but I mean, do you think that things were a little bit better when it wasn't around?
In some ways, there's pros and cons. It is interesting how it can work for knowledge production. It accelerates the process of conjecture and criticism. If anybody says anything, you'll get 10 people saying, no, that's wrong, here's why, which probably produces knowledge more quickly and more efficiently. But who knows what the overall consequences will be. It's all one large human experiment that we're all participating in.
Well, perhaps we should start digging into street epistemology. I feel like in the current climate, people are unwilling to change their beliefs even when presented with overwhelming evidence. You know, COVID, transgender issues, crime statistics, take your pick. Do you think that people are less likely to change their ideas or beliefs these days than perhaps in previous generations? Is this a modern phenomenon, or has it always been like this, do you think?
No, this is a very human thing, being resistant to change, especially resistant to ideologically motivated moral community type beliefs, things that you get a sense of belonging with, things that signal your loyalty to a tribe. People can showcase that on social media and in real life, and it's just a human thing. And there's been ways of dealing with that problem in better and worse ways. And I think street epistemology is probably the best way.
Following on from what you were saying about social media, bringing knowledge much quicker and I guess getting to the truth quicker, technically, I guess. I mean, are you surprised that we're not a little bit more willing to change our ideas when, say, scientific facts get updated quickly, or everyone, because of our phones, we're plugged into the news cycle straight away. So when there is some sort of discovery or some sort of I guess I'm thinking it more in a science sort of realm, that people don't change, more quickly.
Yeah, we can't know everything about everything, so we offload a lot of our cognitions to culture and institutions. And in our ideal world, any kind of scientific institution says something new, we would just believe it because we trust the reliability of the ways that they come to that knowledge. But we find ourselves in a situation where a lot of institutions have been captured, and they've shown themselves to be illegitimate and not worthy of our trust. And that causes a problem with us believing things and not sure what to do in life, because we use knowledge to solve problems, and we need quality knowledge to make progress in society and live our best lives.
Well, I feel like we need to get some basic things out of the way for the audience to begin with. So maybe we should start with the word and the concept epistemology. Could you tell us what epistemology is?
Sure, it's a branch of philosophy about the study of knowledge, how we know what we know.
That is true. That accords with what I was told. In your experience, and this is a bit more of a broad question, as people would be thinking, okay, well, anecdotally, in your experience, how do people know what they know? You're on the streets, you're out there. How do people know what they know, generally speaking?
Anecdotally, people come to know what they claim to know through mainly bad ways. Just hearing things people believe from people that they think are prestigious, and they copy blindly what prestigious people believe in order to fit in with their tribe. That's the default for most humans. And then they, in conversation, show off how much they know about the relevant fields that give them status. That's how they usually do it.
Do you think most people lean on Wikipedia or just a simple Google search for their knowledge these days?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Any subject. Well, Wikipedia is kind of going out of fashion nowadays. It's kind of ChatGPT type of thing. What is whatever? Put it in ChatGPT, and you get sometimes very interesting results, sometimes maybe woke stuff. So now we're in a whole different world. But yeah, traditionally, Wikipedia is a good first start for people.
Well, perhaps you can explain to us what street epistemology is, and how did you find yourself doing it?
Yeah, street epistemology is a way of taking this study of knowledge out and applying it in the real world, in the street, not literally, but just out of academia. It's a way of having conversations with people to help them critically reflect on the quality of their reasoning through civil conversation. Yeah, very much, as you said, based on the Socratic Method, and we're trying to introduce a lot of the latest techniques from psychology and epistemology that we know about today that Socrates didn't know about, to give us the best chance of helping people reflect on the quality of their reasoning and their arguments and their beliefs in a civil, respectful way, collaboratively, not a debate, not something we're trying to fight. It's a way to be curious together about some idea, and through question and answering, as Socrates did, reflect on it. Yeah.
So maybe some practical details. Where do you do it? What are the rules? What are the nuts and bolts of your style of street epistemology?
Yeah, you can do it anywhere where conversation happens, even text-based, but I don't really recommend that. It's ideal if you can build rapport and have any real human connection, at least with voice, but ideally face-to-face or on video. So that includes literally out on the street, but I go out to public parks or on university campuses mainly. But many people just do it on Discord or on Reddit, text threads, Twitter threads, Facebook comments, Facebook private groups, or just in DMs. Ideally, it works better privately, away from the public eye. Yeah, that's where.
So, how did you get into street epistemology? Like, do you have a background in psychology, or did you just see people doing it and you just got into it?
Yeah, my background is being a filmmaker. I moved out here to Los Angeles in 2011, but at the same time, I was starting to edit a movie that I shot with a friend of mine, and it had a bunch of religious themes and stuff. But I was kind of nominally religious. But through the process of editing that movie, I lost my faith, became an atheist, and this book came out called A Manual for Creating Atheists in 2013 that coined the phrase street epistemology, and that's where it was first applied with religious and atheist conversations, which is very interesting how then it was moved on from atheism to broader subjects, philosophy and social issues, any kind of subject, politics. In 2017, the same author, Peter Boghossian, and James Lindsay wrote another book, How to Have Impossible Conversations, which used a lot more techniques and ideas around psychology and philosophy. But during this whole time, there was a community of people who went out and recorded their conversations and posted them on YouTube and got feedback. And the way of having conversation evolved through trial and error rapidly. And we saw what worked, what didn't. And today it's a very powerful tool for helping people reflect. And yeah, it's really great. That's how I got involved.
That's awesome. So, I guess what's the difference between, say, a good conversation, the kind of conversations you have on the street, and one that you would class as maybe a bad conversation, one that ends up in maybe not an actual fight, but an argument or animosity between two people?
Yeah, I guess you can compare the endings of those conversations most clearly. At the end of a debate, you usually just stop. Someone just gets mad and leaves, and or hangs up, or says, F you, F off, I don't want to see you again. That's how a lot of that usually happens. But with street epistemology, many times you hear, I never thought about that. Thanks for listening to me. You've given me a lot to think about. I really appreciate that. Appreciate the conversation. Yeah, I'd be glad to chat more another time. That's what we usually hear at the end. I could probably give more differences in different parts of the conversation if you want.
I think it's interesting because I think we need to describe the physical space a little more, because I think you've got what Steven Pinker would call the burden of knowledge, and you're doing this thing. But I tell you what, I was at the Let Women Speak rally in Sydney, and I walked past a group of people doing street epistemology there, and I think they might have been linked with Peter Boghossian. It was some young peoples, and it looks this isn't just like two people sitting on a bench. This is two people, they've got a whiteboard there. There's like, maybe not at this space, but other times there's lines on the ground. There's stuff written. This doesn't look like, I mean, you think you're underselling how curious this looks. And can I say, alluring, strangely alluring. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was also there at that Sydney event. That was probably me there at the whiteboard and the lines.
I thought it might have been. I didn't have the confidence to say, "Were you there, Reid? And did we almost meet like ships in the night?"
We probably did. Yeah, probably. Yeah, what you're describing is this thing called Spectrum Street Epistemology, which I helped develop with Peter Boghossian last summer when he invited me on his reverse Q&A university tour, where he would go to college campuses and not do a Q&A where he's the professor and people are asking him questions. He would be sitting in the audience and then letting people come up and he would ask them questions. That was the idea at first. But we did that a few times and it was kind of crappy. It was not interesting. So I helped innovate this new way of doing street epistemology, inspired by the Jubilee show Spectrum, where there's 7 lines of tape on the ground with strongly disagree all the way to strongly agree with neutral in the middle and variations in between. And that's just a way to visually see people's confidence and how much they move depending on the questions we're asking and how much they reflect and seeing the consequences of our usual SE conversation. You can see it more visually that way. It's more interesting for video, which is what he was doing. He was creating videos. And this started last year. This is a new form of it. I find it very interesting. SE is usually one-on-one, but this is with a group. So there is additional problems with making sure we're learning from a bunch of different people. It's more of a mediation than like helping one person reflect on the quality of their reasoning. And we very rarely even get to the reasoning or the quality of it. It's about just merely hearing people out on their reasoning and just seeing if people are on the same page, even about words or the state of things around the topic. If you can get that and consensus and common ground on these contentious issues, that itself is a success. But one-on-one SE is usually get down to the quality of the reasoning. You can go even further one-on-one, but yeah, Spectrum SE is different, and we're hoping to do more innovation with that. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
Well, I've been reading Peter Boghossian's film, which he co-wrote with James Lindsay, How to Have Difficult Conversations, and I haven't finished it yet, but they talk a lot about epistemology in this book as one of the tools to having difficult conversations. And one thing that struck me from the very beginning, they talk very much about asking questions about, how did you come to those conclusions? Where have you found that evidence? Which I think is a good tool to start to build trust with someone. You're not challenging their ideas straight away. You're just finding out information about what they believe and how they believe it. Can you run us through some maybe other techniques that you use out on the street that sort of come under this umbrella of epistemology? I mean, obviously you ask a lot of questions of people.
Yeah, sure. I guess I can give you kind of the basic structure of an SE conversation. There's basically 7 steps. But even before the first one, there's like a step 0, pre-conversation considerations. This is where you can remind yourself, okay, I'm not here to debate. I have a certain set of attitudes, a mindset, and a set of ethical principles I want to go along with, being charitable, being honest. I care about the well-being of this person. That's all. You just want to have that mindset going in. But then step 1 is like just establishing rapport, not in a debate where you're just going at it, hard, straight up. You have to build a lot of rapport so people can be more reflective in a more psychologically safe environment. We use rapport for that. So that's a lot of small talk, getting consent, explaining what you're going to be doing, making sure everybody's on board. But then it really starts with just identifying and clarifying a claim. The next step, getting that very precise and very clear, and moving on to the main reasons for believing the claim and how confident you are that claim is true, say on a scale from 0 to 100, or if we're doing the spectrum game, being on one of the lines. And then after all of that takes a long time, just merely understanding their reasons and not merely what they say they use to believe whatever they're believing, but actual real reasons, which we have to ask, probing questions to clarify all that. And then we can get to the evaluating the epistemology, the quality of their reasoning. That's usually the last step before ending the conversation and reflecting on how you did with the last step. So that's the general structure, and this can contain tons of other techniques for each step. So I can keep going, or you can ask me more questions about it.
Yeah, but what's interesting is, I've read Peter's book as well, and that's part the main reason why I got you on, because he's led me down this path of, actually, I feel like the framework for discussions, and especially difficult discussions, isn't something we talk about enough. Do you know what I mean? Like we just launch into these topics, and invariably we're both just picking up a script, and I'm saying, oh, you're so woke, and the other person's saying, yeah, well, you like Trump, and we're just reading, we're just going back and forth in that way, when really we need to be getting under that. But Ricky said something interesting in his questions, like, have you found that you've obviously, building rapport is the main thing, but I've found when I've tried to do this with even people I know quite well, when I've just said, oh, and where did you get that from? The very question itself appears, maybe it's my tone of voice, maybe it's whatever, appears hostile to them, like as if I'm saying, oh, where did you read that? Is this something you've come across?
Yes, for sure, which is why we try not to just jump straight into it. If we do want to challenge someone, especially on a sensitive topic, a contentious issue, there's so much framing you got to do, and just preparatory rapport building, basically. Like, I'm curious about what you just said. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions about that? If you like, I can give my opinion.
My body's clenched up. I'm like, oh no, he's going to say, you just read that. You read that on the Free Press with Barry Weiss, and you haven't done any research yourself. And I'll be like, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's where I got it from.
Yeah. And if it gets to that contentious issue, there are techniques to rebuild rapport or recover broken rapport. Just start talking about people's feelings. I'm detecting some potential anger here, or something like that. Where does that come from? Tell me about that.
This is
if
why
you can't talk about the ideas civilly.
They've snapped your whiteboard in half, and they're like, about punching your camera, and you say, I'm detecting a little bit of hostility here. Something going on.
One thing that popped out of me that Peter has talked about in the book is sort of reframing that question about how do you know that, and changing it to how do we know that, which is a simple little thing, which I think I don't know if it would help or not in this situation. I mean, again, you need to have that rapport to even ask about how you know something that you know. But just that idea of being part of that, how do we know? I think, do you use that technique? Do you say, how do we know that, rather than how do you know that?
Yeah, this comes from the civility mindset we have, which is a collection of attitudes. And one of the attitudes is a collaborative type attitude, which is where you get all that we language from. It helps it frame it as we're not enemies, that we're working together. I may learn something from you. I want to figure this out together, and it's not combative.
And I'm interested to know how you choose topics for your questions.
Yeah, the topics, I usually put a few contentious issues or topics on a whiteboard on my cart when I go out to UCLA or a public park. But I also just leave it open for anybody to talk about anything, because what I really care about is helping people become better critical thinkers about anything. And any topic can lead down to that conversation, because we just get down to questions about what is truth, how should we believe, what is the criteria for having certain levels of confidence about certain things, and is it virtuous to be open-minded about everything? Are you open-minded? What is reality? What does truth mean? How do these relate? Any topic can get down to these very foundational issues.
I actually think, to me, those questions are essential, and I would love us to get to those broad questions. But you're in a very unique position because you've run. Well, actually, how many sessions do you think you've run, just roughly?
Over 10,000, probably between 10,000, 20,000. I don't know.
Wow.
But that's important to know. So you've run that many sessions. Okay, so you've got actually significant amount of ground level data amongst the places that you've been. You could just give us I want to talk more about the actual process, and we're going to maybe step through it in a bit more of a live way shortly. But just, I think it's important for people to hear from your perspective, with your experience, what the most radioactive and divisive questions you've posed so far are, and whether they come up again and again. Because I think it would be very interesting for people to hear that.
Yeah, you've probably seen the video where Peter Boghossian gets accosted by a group of people at PSU, where we had the claim there are only two genders on a whiteboard in the middle of a PSU campus.
Yes.
I did not expect that to happen. I thought we could have a civil conversation with people around gender and sex and trans. That is the hottest button issue. That and racial issues. The general two main topics of wokeness. If you find someone who is quote unquote woke and you ask them about those topics, that is the most radioactive. Because I can talk with religious people all day long. They love it. It's not an issue.
But what's interesting is, don't you think some of these people should be like, I would just love if the same outrage bubbled up with those previous questions. Like, imagine people getting as hot about, their genitals, as they would about the meaning of reality. Like, imagine if you were like, do you think that everything is but a dream within a dream? And imagine if the video turned out like those gender videos, like people were like screaming from the top saying, how dare you, this is a dream, and someone's like, no, it's not, I think therefore I am, like and everyone's like getting really angry.
Yeah, I could see that maybe from like Wittgenstein or someone about deep philosophical issues, but I rarely see that type of thing. I would not expect it.
But it's a testament to how we're not even staring at the navel anymore. We're staring at the penis, really, and like squarely at the penis. But it's just fascinating to me because all of those other questions about love, death, and God are infinitely more terrifying and infinitely more weigh on me a lot more than these fascinating videos of people saying, just arguing about race and gender. Like, it just seems to me quite interesting.
Yeah, I find the ideology, the more I look into it, it is more about love, death, and God. The more you get down to the deepness of it, I think it is an evolved form of Marxism, and I think it's very Gnostic and Hermetic in origin, which is a kind of seeing reality as a prison and wanting to do something to get out of the prison and liberate humanity from this prison. And they see these cultural, social roles as a form of prison, and liberalism as a system perpetuates it. It keeps it in place. So all of our institutions and liberal values and social norms must be dismantled and deconstructed. And if a philosophy professor is out in the middle of a campus with a sentence that everyone believed 10 years ago, there has to be a mob to chase him out. This is the world we find ourselves in. It's very bizarre.
Well, that video you talk about is quite interesting because Peter is doing the street epistemology thing with the lines and talking about this particular topic. There are only two genders with these two guys, and all of a sudden a group of students from way up, like it looks like a 6 or 7 story building from the top, are yelling down, you're making us feel unsafe, like you shouldn't be doing that, like you guys are transphobes, we're going to come down and disrupt you. And it's just 3 guys, and I assume a cameraman or something, just like having a conversation. That got a little heated, But I wonder, have you ever felt unsafe engaging with people the way you do? I mean, maybe having the camera there is one way to temper that a little bit, because people don't want to be caught on camera like roughing you up or anything. But, if the camera's not on and you're doing this, have you ever felt unsafe?
Not particularly. A couple times, some, sketchy people have sat at my table or walked nearby, being in LA. But talking with people, I've never had an issue. I usually try to be very chill and calm. You can probably tell by my demeanor, I'm not very threatening. And I rarely let it get to any kind of contentious or heated debate when I'm one-on-one. But with Peter out in public, we're very much in public space, and there's a lot of people around. We haven't had any safety issues so far. Yeah.
So, obviously we've and we'll link to some of these in our show notes, some of these videos, because they're absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's a real privilege to watch these debates happen, and to see this this passion and this feeling, this belief come like surge and sort of take over the video. But in these sorts of cases, I mean, can you give us? Have you had any wins, serious wins, where you've come across that kind of I don't have no other word, opposition, feeling, belief, whatever, and there's just been a glimmer at the end where the person's, you've gotten the sense that they might maybe ask a question or two of themselves later?
Yeah, I'd say so. We were in Puerto Rico recently and talked about racial issues, and we just asked very simple questions when we made claims like, Kendi type claims where the only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. Is that fair? Is that just? People would move on the lines from strongly agree to strongly disagree when the words were clarified, like equity or diversity. These words are being used in unorthodox ways, and once we clarify them, the way the woke use them, no one really thinks those are good things. And a few clarifying questions can help people reflect and move right there in person. But that's not ideally what we should expect. People usually change their minds in the privacy of their own homes when they can think about it themselves, ideally with the tools of critical thinking. And it's more that we give them better ways of thinking or model it, and then they can copy that and apply it to whatever topic we're talking about. And we kind of detach ourselves from any kind of persuasion goals around the topic itself. It's more about showing better ways of coming to knowledge and letting the chips fall wherever they may, wherever that process leads.
Well, I think Reid, we've got to get you to run us through a very basic version of this now. Just take something from your recent travels and hit us with it. And Ricky, and I'm terrified, by the way. I'm terrified that Reid's going to find out how loosely held my beliefs are. But what do you think?
Okay. How about the claim from Billboard Chris? Children cannot consent to puberty blockers, or something related to that, where children should be allowed to transition, minors should be allowed to take hormones or take elective surgeries, or socially transition. Or like I listened to your podcast with Helen Joyce and Sal Grover. Should there be female-only spaces, including apps for just females? Is that discriminatory? These are questions I could talk about.
Ricky, you're looking at the menu. What jumps out at you?
Well, let's do the female-only spaces. I mean, that's something we've covered recently with Sal. So,
bathrooms, prisons, sports, anything in particular?
Oh, geez. Again, I'm looking at the menu. I'm saying prisons, bathrooms. They're all hot topics. What about? Well, let's go for it. Bathrooms. Let's go the vanilla option.
Sure. So I guess the claim would be bathrooms should be segregated by sex. All public bathrooms. Would that be a good claim? A good clarified claim?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so on a scale from 0 to 100, for either of you, where would you be on that claim that all public bathrooms should be segregated by sex?
You go first, Ricky.
So 0 being you agree they should be segregated, and
0 be all like confidence that is false, that should not happen. 50 would be unsure. 100 would be absolutely positive. Yes.
okay, sure. Well, I guess I'd be on close to that 100 mark, that they should be segregated by sex. Yeah,
99 or 100.
I'd say 100. Yeah,
100. All right.
John.
Well, look, this is one of those things where I would say I'm close. I'm definitely close to 100, but I'm not willing to concede the whole pot. But with that, and then my mind is racing because I'm thinking about all of our wonderful guests listening to this episode as well, and saying, what do you mean it's not 100?
You've betrayed us, John.
But we always talk about this. We talk about like sometimes you agree with someone like 98%, and then this 2% you don't agree with them, and then it's got to be a jihad. You've got to go, right, well, that's it. I've got my AK, and you've got to go. So I think that I'm just going to leave a little bit of wiggle room because, to be honest with you, I'm not sure about anything in life. But don't forsake me. Let's just say it's 98%.
Gotcha. Yeah, so just going meta real quick, that is a social potential influence on our confidence. Like, not even getting into the reasons, I'm hearing potential fear of ostracization from your audience.
Definitely.
If you don't be
Capture.
committed to this idea. So
it's Holly Lawford Smith. I'm thinking of Holly Lawford Smith. She's going to be on Twitter straight after this. She's going to be saying, "What's the deal? I listened to your thing. That 2%, that was enough." And then that's it.
Yeah. So next up would be, now that we'll have a clarified claim and level of confidence, we can get into the reasons. What would be the main thing that gets you to that level of confidence? Main reason for being there for either of you?
Well, I guess for me, it does come down to biology, and that and I'm not saying all men are rapists or are going to sexually assault you, but the majority of sexual assaults on women are perpetrated by men. So I think for that reason alone, I think that's one of my big reasons for believing that these sorts of spaces should be sexually segregated. Even if in the majority of cases nothing would happen, but it's that it's that small percentage of men that do prey on women in vulnerable spaces that concerns me.
Yeah, I'm hearing a kind of protection of women type argument, type reason.
As John would say, I'm being a white knight here.
Don't worry, I'm suiting up too. I've got my armor on.
Yeah. Would that also be your main reason, John?
It would definitely. Yeah, I think the main reason. I'll have to say yes. I've got some other ones, but yeah, I think that it is a matter of biology, and it's some of the information that we've gotten just from all the women in my life and the women we speak to as well. Things I hadn't considered before. They say stuff like, women are aware when there's a man in the room, that they're aware when they perceive danger from men in a way that, like, I thought about this recently. This is a random thing, but this is an old example that people give, but I can go traveling alone. I've done that. I get a backpack, put it on my back, and I go to I can go to mad places at night, overseas, and as long most places, and I don't have to worry really. And whereas I was into Red Fem recently, and Jen and Hannah was saying that they have to come up with all these workarounds. Like that there's countries in the world where they have to go and they have to bring a friend, and they go that most of the bad behavior that they get in Italy or something or wherever, sorry to call out Italy, but in places like wherever, certain parts of the country, that drops significantly when there's another woman with them. And so it's those sorts of insights that inform my position. But I'll just say yes, I agree with Ricky.
Gotcha, cool. if we had to pie chart out all of your reasons for being at your level of confidence, how much of that pie chart would that reason take up? Is it all of it, or is there more reasons that get you to that confidence?
Well, I think the biology part of it, just differences in strength, it takes up a large portion of that pie chart.
Yeah, that would that be a thing that supports the protection of women reason because of the biology of males?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Is there anything apart from that, from biology or the protection of women,
Well,
to as a reason to
They don't.
segregate
They don't. They
bathrooms by
don't.
sex?
They don't like it. It's something that they have. It's my understanding that for I don't know. I don't even know what the word to use would be. It's they find it unpleasant, uncomfortable, unwanted, and gross. You know what I mean? Like there's a range of things that they don't like about men being in their spaces in bathrooms. As unsafe would be the big one that we've just talked about. They go, "Well, I feel unsafe." But then there's all these other reasons, which yeah, they might take up small things, but if we're playing Moneyball, they add up to something quite significant. When people they're like, "Well, I just feel this is not something that I'm down with." And I guess when you say it out loud like this in black and white, because people can always go, "Oh, you know, oh, you're uncomfortable, are you? Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that me existing makes you uncomfortable." Like so, it's a bit of a difficult thing to put into words.
but just on the other side of the coin, there, I think there are a large proportion of men who would be uncomfortable going to the bathroom if there are lots of women around as well. Like, I'm bladder shy at the best of times. So, if I have to
Mm,
go to the toilet and there's a bunch of women standing around, like, you know,
mm.
presumably having pillow fights and, just comparing their breasts, but
Jelly wrestling,
all of
all
that,
that sort of stuff.
but
Yeah.
and if I've got to use the urinal in those sorts of situations, like, I don't think I can do it.
Okay, so I'm hearing another reason of avoiding kind of social awkwardness apart from the safety of women.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Okay, and how would these two reasons compare in terms of weight in your mind? Is the safety of women like vastly more of a thing that contributes to your confidence, like 100 to 1 or 2 to 1?
Well, for me, I think it has to be. Oh, geez, he wants to put me numbers on it. See, we're in the humanities, Reid, and frankly, sort of so are you. So I object to this line of questioning.
However
But I'm
you
not.
want to
But I'm not going to
phrase it.
snap your whiteboard just yet. So I just feel like the protection of women thing is a the cost of not caring about that is too great, and in that the instances where it's gone wrong, where we've been a bit lax, is the cost has been great, uh, so I think to me it would be it's got to be a I don't know, maybe a 3/4 reason of the pie. 3/4 of the pie chart is like that. Ricky,
Yeah, I agree with that.
you've got to say something too. You can't just let me. This is hang myself, and you just go, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Well, I think maybe all those other reasons, like the discomfort and um, just, I guess, the self consciousness that some women feel, probably takes up that last quarter of the pie. But the safety thing is definitely the larger part, the 3/4.
Okay. If I removed that reason, say with like a magic wand where I could guarantee the safety of all women in bathrooms in perpetuity with my magic wand, so that reason would have no longer any bearing on people in bathrooms, would that change your confidence about this?
And I don't have to think about any practicalities here because again, this can get derailed because I'm thinking about it's like in Singapore, right? They've got problems they need to solve, and you can solve anything if you put a person in a street with a machine gun, standing there and going, "Don't do that thing," and you say, "Oh, well, that problem's taken away," and you go, "Yeah, but it's created another problem."
Yeah. Say like the magic wand puts like a protective force field around women. They can't be touched by any males,
Okay.
or they can just be turned invisible if any male is in there, so they can't even be looked at. If that happened, would this change your confidence about segregating bathrooms?
Well, I think if they could be invisible, then I guess so. Yeah, because then that takes away that last quarter of the pie, which is the discomfort and the self-consciousness and the just the I guess the ick factor of that for women.
Okay. Where would your confidence be if that was the case?
It's tricky.
It is tricky. Look, I mean, yeah, so I mean, the good news is there's a solution. Like if indeed we can assure women's safety, well then that's one of the things, one of the main things where Kieran complained about. And then if there was a subsequent to that, if there was the invisibility thing or whatever, and women were like, okay, well they don't foresee me, and I mean it's a bit weird that I'm invisible and I'm now in this hollow man kind of thing where I've got all this moral conundrum going on. Like that's for another discussion.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I don't. Yeah, sure, that would solve the problem. Absolutely, they just and then I would go, well, then we need to rethink bathrooms. I'd say, well, now it's not called single sex, but now it's just called. That's the Ally McBeal bathroom. Then finally we can get the Ally McBeal bathroom where it's just a receptacle, but then the only downside to that would be, either they're invisible and we're not invisible, or if we're both invisible, then it's just this disgusting receptacle where we all know that what's going on there, this is doing my head in.
But there would be a possibility that we'd bump into someone as well if they're invisible. That'd be a bit awkward. Like,
Yeah. And also incorporeal. They're basically ghosts.
okay.
Like they weren't even there. So I'm hearing you were both very close to 100, 198. If this new reality happened, what number would you be?
This is why I left the 2%, Ricky. So you're stitched up. You look like a total ideologue who just can't let anything. And I was like, maybe we can live another way. And here we go. Now my percentage would drop way down.
I think in this situation, you almost could live without bathrooms. Like maybe because you could essentially go anywhere. Like maybe there's some sort of portable solution that you have some sort of bag that you can go in. You just you do the invisible thing. You can stand behind a tree or in the street.
I think
even
you've just explained why you are terminally male. By the way, no woman in the world would come up with that solution. I'm going to tell my wife and say, "Oh, Rick thinks that we should all go invisible and we'd all just be able to do it anywhere." Look in London. In London, they've got those outdoor portable urinals. No woman came up with that. They're not for women, and no woman came up with it. And you have stitched yourself up again.
Yep, I just can't. I just can't get rid of that Y chromosome.
So I'm hearing from both of you, your confidences would both reduce significantly if that happened. That all bathrooms should be sex segregated.
It has to.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah,
it has to. If I say no, then I'm hanging on to something and saying just because.
Yeah, so that sounds like a real reason for you. If we took that reason away, then your confidence would drop. So that confidence is actually that reason is part of your actual confidence, giving you that confidence to be that for that position. So I just want to check because it may be completely something else. This may just be a rationalization, but that does sound like something that is the real reason. So great. So now that I know that that's the real reason, how do we know this is a good reason? It's what kind of protection for women? I'm hearing a kind of this is a normative claim, a public policy claim that something should be this way. How do we judge normative moral claims like this? I'm hearing a protection from harm. I'm hearing a harm kind of morality foundation here, and care for women potentially. Are there other ways of thinking about morality? Are there other things that relate to this in terms of thinking about segregating bathrooms morally?
Well, the trade-offs you have to, and that's the argument. Is that the argument being made is that the rights of people who identify as women are in conflict with the rights of women, and so
a kind of appeal to liberty.
I suppose so. That seems to be one of the arguments going on. So that's on the other side of the coin. People go, oh, well, there's, what about this group of people? But then part of you is like, well, yes, but we don't know enough yet. We don't know enough about that condition. We're not even allowed to talk about that condition or research that condition really. So we don't know enough about that. And then it's sort of the tyranny of the minority as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like where we've got this enormous swathe of a class of people who we know have less upper body strength. We know, because let's face it, even though Ricky said he wouldn't want women in there, most guys most of the time are sort of, if it's just one or two women or something, and they're not screaming and yelling, most guys I would imagine would say, oh, I don't care. Oh, they'd maybe even say something gross and male like, oh, bring it on. Like something inappropriate. So I feel like
they're the ones dreaming of the pillow fights and the jelly wrestling
and the jelly wrestling. Yeah. So, but what do you think, Ricky?
Well, yeah, I guess it is that trade-off between a very small section of the population versus a very large section of the population. And I guess if you take an extreme libertarian view, it's like everyone should be able to do whatever they want. But yeah, I just
and that's easy when you've got the
upper body strength
when you've got all of that, and you've got not that it's all about that, but there's a whole lot of things that come with it, that aggression, that that disagreeableness, as JP would say. There's I don't know. Help us out, Reid.
We can also think of it in terms of consequences. If this policy was put in place, how would the world be like? What things would we expect to happen? Are those things we want to see or avoid? So we have some paths in the road of adopting this policy or rejecting it. And also, are there other policies potentially, as an answer to the question, I guess, how should public bathrooms, what should public bathrooms look like? How should that work? Should there be public bathrooms? Probably yes. Now that we know there should be, what's the best policy around them? One answer to that is they should be segregated by sex. Are there other answers to that question?
They could be segregated by strength. We have to do some feat of strength to get into one bathroom.
Mortal Kombat. Test your might, and you've got to go. Yes. You've got to break something to get in there, or do the dim mak. Yep.
Yes.
Get in there.
But the other thing that just occurred to me is some people may feel uncomfortable being invisible. So there may be a whole group of people that just, for whatever reason, maybe they have a phobia, maybe it's the way they feel.
Another less? I mean, your idea is got something. I'm not going to say it's got nothing, but some people would say the rule could be maybe what it's been up until now. You could slice into that proportion of, and this is not great, but it's taking away some of it. You'd say of trans people, you'd say if you pass, then you can go in. You know what I mean? And use a cubicle or something. Like that's kind of the unspoken rule now, which is if you pass and I don't know, and you're not just standing there in the swimming change room, getting your big business out for all to see, then I think that's that. Then at least that takes that proportion down to.
But how do you know those people who pass aren't then going to go on to show their big business out there, in the change rooms? There's no way of knowing that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm hearing a con to one of the options is I'm hearing segregated by conformity to sex-based stereotypes.
Oh, geez, when you put it like that. But yes.
So we can segregate it by sex, which is objective, or we can segregate it by conforming to the sex-based stereotypes, which are kind of maybe more vague, but somewhat objective. People with skirts go in one space. Another way of, that type of thing. So now we can think of just those two options. We'll stick with those. Consequences of either policy, pros and cons of both. What is the main pro I'm hearing is sex segregation is that it protects women. Another con of that, what would you think of, what could anyone say is a con to sex segregation?
To sex segregation. Well, I'm very stuck on this idea that there's a range of people who would say I'm gender fluid, I'm non-binary, I'm trans, I'm a furry, I'm a kink machine, whatever, and that group of people would say this is not fair. I should be able to live my best life, be who I want to be. This is exactly like 1944, So that's I'm imagining what a con would be. That would be presented.
I'm hearing a kind of like failure to be represented in public spaces for like
Yeah, they'd
non-binary
say.
people.
Well, they would say we're not allowed to exist, is what they would say.
Yeah.
You're not allowing me to exist. You're forcing me. I'm not binary right now. You're forcing me to put on a skirt to go into the bathroom. That's humiliating. It's not representative. I'm not allowed to just, I have no dignity, human dignity, all of that.
So it'll hurt some people's feelings as a con.
It will hurt some feelings. It will.
Okay. Any other pros and cons for the sex segregation?
Imagine saying that to them. Imagine saying, so it'll hurt your feelings. And then they'd just go, give me that whiteboard. And then smash it over your head.
I think I have a certain kind of rapport with you guys, but yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so what con would there be for sex segregation? Is that's the
yeah, or pro in any others?
Well, I guess the pro is, we've covered that in terms of the safety thing
and the avoiding social awkwardness
and that, yeah. But in terms of a con, I guess it comes back to the feelings of people who claim to be, a sex or a gender that they're, that they're not biologically.
Mm-hmm. And I guess for the pro for the conforming to sex-based stereotypes option, a pro would be it makes it less likely to hurt people's feelings.
Guess so. Yeah.
I think it's slightly more, in my mind, you probably across it more, but in my mind, it's maybe it's a flawed utilitarian option where you'd go, okay, well, if there's 1,000 people who are put out by not being allowed because it's sex-based, you go, well, there'd be a proportion of those people that we could make happy or please or have preferences that we could fulfill if we let them in if they passed. But then that's like a lottery though, isn't it? That's as you say, Ricky, it is a lottery. You're just saying, okay, well, you pass, you can get in, but we don't know anything else.
That's right. Yeah, we don't know what's going on in their mind.
Down there. Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
I'm thinking of this very crude moral philosophy type question. Forgive me, but how many female rapes is worth the tears of non-binary people? Like, is it one female rape? One female can be raped to save 1 million 2-hour crying fits for non-binary people.
Well, they wouldn't accept this. They'd say, I'm not just going to cry. They'd say, I'll go and kill myself, and therefore it's my life that you're.
Yeah.
We could go that far, like suicides of trans people and non-binary people. If there were more of those than female rapes or female sexual assaults, would that have any effect on the calculus in this policy? What
a great question.
Yeah.
That is because this brings up so many taboos, because people say there's that old, that saying that a lot of people agree with, which is that rape is worse than death. A lot of people, this is a common idea out there, right? So if you say, oh, well, we've got to save these lives, then you're not buying into that at all. Geez, Ricky, quickly say a number.
No.
What a dreadful question. What a dreadful question.
But the other thing in my mind that doesn't help this decision is that I feel like that argument that, trans people are going to they're going to commit suicide. I think that's often used very manipulative, in a manipulative way to win an argument or to change an argument. I just don't think that
This is from the guy who wanted a feats of strength to get into a toilet.
Because you don't think it's empirically true, you think they're exaggerating, is what I'm hearing.
I do think there's some exaggeration going on there. No doubt people who suffer gender dysphoria, do commit suicide and, are suffering mentally. But it's just hard to know when they make those sorts of claims so flippantly that everyone's just going to go commit suicide if they can't use the bathroom of their choice. I don't know. I just can't buy it 100%.
Well, you'd have to say, look, if you're keeping it 100, no amount of tears is worth a rape. It's not. It's just not. That's if the question is, if we're talking tears, well, I don't care. You could fill up the ocean with tears and a woman getting raped. It's not worth it. It's not. I don't care if everyone has a sad day, a sad year. That sounds extreme, but that's different from the if you could tell me empirically that we had a number of people who were, it was like a binary thing. It's like, okay, well, if you follow through with this policy, then literally this amount of people will go home and just kill themselves automatically. Well, then we're talking about a different calculus. Then you have to look at the numbers, I guess, and say, and just like a hospital behind the scenes would have to do, they'd have to say, which they do all the time, right? They go, who's a candidate? Who's a candidate for this? Said it to someone whom I lost. You know what I mean? You're not a candidate, for this service.
Mm.
Yeah. What we're talking about here, are these good criteria for judging the options here? Basically the amount of harm for certain demographics of people, whether that be rape or suicide or really hurt feelings, depression, crying. These seem like the most relevant metrics to judge the quality of the options.
What else do we have? I mean, the only other things that people make these decisions on are social clout, politics, like how good is it going to make me look, or winning points. So when you take away winning points, or you take away money, like if there's no tender, like if I'm going to build Ricky's outdoor toilet machine or whatever, then I've got a stake in this. So when you remove money, self-interest, and all of that, what are we left with? Aren't we left with just the preferences and the yes, the feelings, even though we've been sort of not taking that, we've been taking a little bit of light of that, but yeah, you do have to look at about harm, physical harm, living and dying and suffering, like physical suffering. What else is there?
Okay, great. So these sound like good metrics. What would the metrics need to be to change your mind about this policy? Like what would be the amount of each of these metrics? Feel free to pick any to make you change your mind about it.
I don't know. I'm confused. I feel like we're so deep now.
Like if we did a empirical study and found that, however, whatever the ratio is, that say, yes, females did get raped or sexually assaulted by voyeurism or some other kind of thing, but it happened at such a low rate compared to it's like we do this test and half of it, where we put one policy in one place and one policy in the other place, and we compare the results of both. So some females were raped and had sexual assault, but also in the other place where we did the other one, there's also metrics around non-binary and trans people's suicide. If the gender conformity policy was put in place and virtually no females got raped more than the other policy, but also there was tons of suicides by trans and non-binary people, like these types of things. Is this?
I think you would have to show a direct correlation, like opening up bathrooms to to people who identify as other genders, that had an overwhelming positive influence on suicide in that community, which I don't know whether
evidence.
Yeah,
as well.
and I don't know whether you could measure that, how you could measure that.
Like it can't be based on feelings or wanting to look good or anything. It needs to be something that we all go, oh wow, like, there it is. We see it, Then again, there's so many instances where the data's there and people don't get. So,
Yeah.
That's true.
Ignoring the practicalities of how we would get that data or test that, just what would the results need to be to change your mind, or is there no result that would change your mind?
oh, look, I think if we're going to get, I'll throw myself out there and say, if we're going to continue to build society and to move forward, you have to give up something. And I'd say, and at that point, would I turn to my ladies and say, okay, all right, like we've got this irrefutable, bulletproof data. It's going to literally save thousands of lives. We know that 100%. We know that. There's no doubt in that. Then I'd have to push that agenda and say, look, this is a change we could make. Like what? Like I'm sorry, like I can't be the zero tolerance guy in this instance if we're talking about the deaths of thousands of people.
Yeah.
It's the less bad option, you would probably say.
It is the less bad option if I was forced to say that.
Yeah.
By Reid Nicewonder.
Yeah. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. The same for you, Ricky, or no?
Yeah, for sure. I think you just have to weigh that up, and if you could show that thousands of lives are saved, then you would just have to go with that option.
Great. I can't think of anything else to think about. Are there any other things we should think about for this question? Anything we missed?
Oh, look, I'm terrified right now. It's just like this is why it's so good, But anyway, Reid, no, I can't think of anything else. I've said everything I've got to say.
I think if we were to take it this far and to think about it this deeply, I think that the easiest solution would just be to have individual lockable bathroom stalls, like just totally redesigning public bathrooms full stop, and just everything is individual,
Yeah, that would be another answer to the question of how should public bathrooms be.
Yeah.
That's another potential option. And we could keep going around the practicalities of that option. Maybe get into price or expenses, or who knows. There's a lot potential other reasons, pros and cons for various options. Keep it going. But has your confidence changed about this at all?
I think I'm pretty. I stick by my initial. I've got that. I always have and partly through going through this process and watching all of your videos, Peter's videos, reading the book, and thinking about how I know what I know. I always have to leave a crack in the door to change my mind. There are some things, maybe spiritually, which I won't talk about, one way or the other, that I do believe on, and I wouldn't bring them into this conversation. You know what I mean? But if we're talking about these sorts of things, I pretty much stick by what I had to say. I believe, but and in that 2% that I left open at the beginning is evidence to my satisfaction and harm reduction, and then sure, it's on.
Great. Same place, Ricky, I assume.
Well, when John puts it like that, it does sound good to have a little crack open. So
Don't be bullied. Don't be bullied.
I might be persuaded to move down 1% or 2. I think having that opening might be good.
Great, awesome. Appreciate the chat. I'd love to continue it at any time. Thanks.
Wow,
that was awesome, Reid.
Yep, cool.
That was so good.
Was that different from how you usually talk about, or how you hear conversations about this happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure,
It's you just didn't rely on any of the rhetorical crutches that we usually use in these conversations, these shorthands to immediately turn it into red team, blue team, or trying to go for the clicks or something. Like, it's the most, this is really where the game is being played, and people do not want to play this game.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have any idea where I would be? I assume you know my bias because I work with Peter, but do you have any idea where I would be on that scale?
Oh goodness, no, I actually don't. I feel like well, I feel like you would be. My guess is that you would be uh, similar. It would be really high on the claim that they should be sex based sex-based
Segregation.
discrimination, segregate, sex-based segregation of bathrooms. But I think you would, if we go through, you would have to leave that the option of, if I could give you evidence to your satisfaction that would
Yeah.
solve some of these problems that you have, then you would change. You wouldn't. I mean, I'm interested to know, what is your position?
Yeah, with SE, we try not to message, as they say, in How to Have Impossible Conversations, giving our own opinion or facts. But if people ask, yeah, feel free to share your own views. And yeah, it would be round 99, like, exact spot.
Mm.
But we try to be
One more than me.
we try to be not neutral. We try to be neutral, but a bias towards rationality, but neutral towards the claim. Hopefully I did that.
Wow.
Now, Reid, how do you know when you've got to the end of your conversation when you're out there on the street? Like, is there a natural end point, or, I mean, obviously it might get cut off sometimes because people they can't invest the time, or they need to do something, or they go about their day. But is there naturally a point where you think that's the end?
Yeah, I do a very special form of SE where I go out and talk with strangers. So I'm not really expecting to see them again. So I try to push it as far as I can and challenge as hard as I can within appropriate rapport levels. So I just kind of keep going however long they have time for. But if you're doing this with friends or family, and just go to when there's just a moment of reflection, they pause, they think, you can leave it there and pick it up back up when they can think about something. Yeah, that type of thing.
Well, Reid, I think you've been so generous with your time today, and here's what we'd like to do. We've got a bunch of other questions we want to ask you, but we've got to get you to come back, do this again if you're open to that, because this is what our audience needs to be doing. This is what we need to be getting out there. Just going through this process and about these scary topics and putting yourself on the line and learning these things. So that's our plan, if you're open to that.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love that. Yeah.
We do have a final quick question that we ask all of our guests, and that's, we'd like to know what you're reading right now.
I'm reading Chris Rufo's new book, The American Cultural Revolution.
Yes, we're going to read that and try and get Chris on the show. I'm going to see if I can hunt him down somehow, some way. So, Reid, how can people find you online? How can they follow your work?
Yeah, just Google Cordial Curiosity. I'll find my YouTube channel. And if they're interested in street epistemology in general, streetepistemology.com.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for an awesome discussion, Reid.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the New Flesh podcast. If you like our work, please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts or even writing us a review. It really does help the show reach a wider audience. We'll be back with another episode next week. Until then, long live the New Flesh.